Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week,
tackling everything, it can be a bit like juggling. So you're juggling so many balls at one time. And then sometimes you have to learn to put one ball down in order to keep the others up in the air.
Or sometimes it might be, I'm not feeling anything. Like I have
Yeah.
no emotion. I have no thought. I am in no state to describe an adjective to this situation at all.
I am so happy to help others. But then when it comes to me, it's like my emotions are mine and I need to deal with them myself. When really, like, sometimes I do need someone to say, what can I do to help?
and I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday.
The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. My name's Mick. Thanks for checking out the show this week, and a fascinating conversation with a brilliant young individual who I think you're really going to enjoy listening to, because I was absolutely enthralled by the conversation, and I think her experiences are something we can all kind of learn from, and also her mindset is something we can all learn from as well. Let me explain. About 18 months or so ago, we were talking about the plight of young carers, the difficulties that young carers were facing, particularly in the midst of the pandemic, this forgotten cohort, if you like, of young people who are having to care for a young person at home. A lot of the support networks fell away. They were also trying to homeschool themselves at the same time as helping out at home, a really difficult time. Now, last week marked Young Carers Action Day, and with it came a set of new statistics from the team at Carers Trust. Now, the Carers Trust, fantastic organisation, who were looking at the experiences of young people and how difficult life is for them as young carers. 53% said the time that they'd spent caring for their family members or loved ones had increased in the last year. 1 in 5 said that they were caring up to 49 hours a week. 1 in 3 said they were always or usually worried, stressed, and lonely. 40% said they never or didn't often have someone to talk to at school. And calls from the Carers Trust for more respite breaks for these young people, support packages, better identification of young carers so you can get them to the support services who might be able to help them. And of course, education providers as well, talking collaboratively with those organisations to make sure that that child's prospects are still maintained despite all the things they've got to do. And what I really notice when I speak to young carers is, rather than speaking to young people who are sort of removed from society, albeit that might be their experience, I'm also seeing and hearing from young people who are brilliantly skilled, who take on great responsibility, who are hugely empathetic, who have got a skill set which a lot of people would still be looking for in their 20s and their 30s. So it's not like these are, people we can, box off into a corner and say, oh, it's a shame for them, isn't it difficult? These are young people who are facing difficult times now, but with the right support, they can thrive and also then hopefully use their experience to take on opportunities later in life and to make a huge amount of difference. There's loads of content on this on the Carers Trust website, so I'll point people in the direction of this. But we're going to meet Storm. Storm, as we'll hear, is a young carer and has a great deal of experience of it. Just spend a little bit of time with Storm. You'll get a sense of what she's been through, some of those mental health aspects as well, the practicalities of it as well. She started off by telling me about her own caring experience.
So I care for my mum, who's in recovery from cancer, and it's been hard. I can definitely say that. But and I think it's hard to see a family member or someone you love go through something like that, because it's like, well, it's just hard because you don't want to see them in pain or see what might happen or see them being ill. And it's like, I want to fix that, but you can't. And it's hard you have to accept that you can't change what's wrong, but you can be there. And that's like pretty hard, but it's also good because I got closer and I got a lot closer to my mum than we were before. That makes no sense.
No, I think it does make sense as well, because I think when someone's going through a difficult time, or when families are going through a difficult time, they obviously pull together, and actually that emotional
Yeah.
connection is obviously very strong, with your parents as well. I think maybe from an outsider's perspective, some people would think, well, it must be difficult enough going through that as a young person yourself, experiencing that. But then with that come the sort of caring responsibilities on top of that. And you'll know as a young person, there's a lot going on in the world and a lot to deal with as well. What's it like taking on those extra and other responsibilities?
It's hard, but at the same time, because I've been like, I learned how to cook when I was like 7, maybe a bit younger, because my mum taught me. So I learned how to do all of that. And I learned how to do washing when I was really young. And I put I wrote out a code to help me understand the settings on the washing machine. So I've been doing that since I was like 6, 7 as well. So in a way, not much changed apart from personal care in the early stages of the treatment. And that was hard because it was just hard washing my mum's hair and stuff, because like to know that she couldn't do that. And that really, that hurt me. Not hurt me, but like it hurt my heart to see her being in pain. And it's like I just wanted to have a magic wand and fix all of that. But no, tackling everything, it can be a bit like juggling. So you're juggling so many balls at one time. And then sometimes you have to learn to put one ball down, but then it's deciding which one you're going to put down in order to keep the others up in the air. If that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense, and it's a huge credit that that's something that you're able to do. Was there a point where you thought, like, I'm not qualified for this? Like, this is like how come I've got to do all this? Shouldn't somebody else be coming to do all this now?
Yes, like a lot. So like there was times where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. But in a way, that's how I kind of tackle life anyway. So whenever I come across something, it's like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but we'll find out what happens. We'll find out where it goes. What's the worst that can happen? And that's kind of the way that I applied there as well. The only thing I didn't do was like injections and stuff, because I wasn't allowed to do it. And there was times where she did it herself. But I didn't like seeing that, so I wasn't there for that.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. I've spoken to young carers before, and people might think, well, it's the washing, or it's the washing up, or it's the dusting, or the hoovering, and I guess it's all of that. But the thing that surprised me as well, that speaking to other young carers, also things like filling in forms or paperwork and jobs that you associate with adulthood, the boring stuff that comes with adulthood. But actually, young people picking it up at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15 years of age, having to fill in complicated forms for disability payments and things like that. The sort of stuff that no young person wants or should have to do, but it becomes part of the job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, both me and my mum are dyslexic as well. So that adds an extra stress to forms. We did get help with the forms. I can't remember who helped. But when it came to that, I helped as much as I could. And then she did what she could. And then we managed to get through it together. But when we couldn't, we did have help with that. Because forms are just a whole ball of nightmares.
Absolutely. You will find no one who disagrees with you on that one, Storm. Can I ask you about sort of education as well? Because obviously there's everything going on at home, but then there's the normal stuff, and it's the homework and exams and all. What is that balance like, and how have you been able to sort of get through it?
So yeah, the education place that I was in, they were really bad, and they didn't understand, and they judged, and I felt that I was actually discriminated against. And I remember being in the room and all of the teachers were like there. Well, not all, but there was like a few. And then there was me sat in a corner with a filing cabinet right next to me. And like this other little table here. So I was quite literally boxed in with all of them there and me like pressed against the wall. I felt I was being attacked because they kept saying that I was failing, even though I wasn't. And they were saying that I'm not coping, even though, I mean, yes, I wasn't my normal self, but what do you expect? But in terms of getting my work done, I was getting it all done on time, if not early. I was helping other people with stuff because they didn't understand some of it. And yeah, they used her as an excuse to bunk me down a year, which I refused. And yeah, so
it's interesting that it's interesting, Stucky. You raised that the survey found 40% of young carers and young adult carers either never or not often had support or someone to talk to at school as well. 52% talked about the struggle between the balance between sort of study with caring as well. And obviously the school were aware of your situation, and obviously we're looking to sort of manage that in some way, but that obviously wasn't done in a way which you felt was with parity, if you like, that you were on an even, that this was an agreement that you could reach together. There was obviously a feeling from yourself that this was the school had made a decision and they were going to tell you what that decision was, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the education place that I was in, they just, like you said, they just told me and assumed. And that's one of the biggest things you should never do when it comes to young carers or young adult carers. You should never, ever assume. You should always ask. And they never did that. And that hurt me because they just told me how I was feeling. And they didn't even give me a chance to defend myself or speak up for myself or have my friend in there with me, because she knows what I'm like. And she knew that I wouldn't speak up for myself because I struggle with that. And I came out afterwards and she was waiting outside for me, bless her. And she knew how I was feeling and she was like, right, that's not okay. And she was just amazing the way she supported me. And I just wish that they'd been like that because it would have made a massive difference.
I'm so sorry that you've had that experience. It's so frustrating, isn't it, that there's sort of a lack of knowledge or stigma or ignorance that comes with young carers. Part of it is down to the fact because we don't know how many there are, so schools aren't necessarily equipped or have the appropriate training because they don't know how widespread the problem is. But even if they do identify someone, to then make a meal of, to make a mess of that process and not to not have that young person engaged in that decision making strikes me as something for a failure in that particular instance. Can I ask you about feelings, Storm? Because obviously we talk about the mental health impacts of being a young carer. Phrases that came up in the survey: stress, worry, anxiety, burnout. You're sort of nodding along to each of those. Is it a case of tick all the boxes, yes to each?
Oh yes, definitely. And anger is another one. And because when you're dealing with whatever the condition may be of the person you care for, anger comes with that, whether it be the fact that the person has a disability or a mental health condition. You're not angry at the person. It's kind of more not anger towards the world, but just it's hard to explain. It's just like a mix. Like with me, I was like angry that my mum had to be the one that got ill. And it's like, why? That's not fair. Like, that's not okay. But in a way, it's like, I know, you know that saying, some things are meant to happen. Like, I like that phrase, but I also don't like it, because why are some things meant to happen? Like, that's not, like, no, it's not okay. But then at the same time, maybe we could deal with it better than somebody else might have dealt with it. And in a way, it's, yes, we dealt with it. And if that saved somebody else going through even more pain and not being able to cope with it, then, you know.
I think it's a very wise thing to say, because I think sometimes when people emotionally don't know how to deal with a situation that they're hearing about, they'll often say, and it happens when, like, if you go for a job and you don't get the job, then they always say, everything happens for a reason. And that's true, because everything did happen for a reason. You didn't maybe get the job because you weren't qualified, or that there was a better candidate. That's the reason. But I think that sometimes people like to then maybe think that there is a higher power in play that's controlling your fate. It was actually, sometimes you're just in a situation that's difficult, and as you say, you can feel angry, not at the people in the situation or the individual aspects of it, but just the overall thing ramps up and makes you feel a certain way. I think sometimes with feelings, we almost feel like we're not allowed to have a feeling. Like, you know what? I just feel like this stinks. Like, this whole thing, the situation doesn't feel fair, and I feel like it's, different. And I think that's anyone listening to what your life is like, and the difficult things you've had to experience would think that's absolutely completely understandable. That if there are days where you're getting on and it's fine, or there are days where you're feeling a bit frustrated or a bit lethargic or a bit, I can't be bothered, people would totally understand that. In the same way, I think they would also understand, Storm, if you were going, I just feel really miffed off about this whole situation. People go, that's completely understandable, because it's a difficult thing that you're going through. And I think that's about having the ability, isn't it, to sort of spot when those moments are and understand that you're feeling anger, or that you're feeling in a certain way. And hopefully that you've got maybe someone you can talk to about it and have that conversation.
And it's like, it's hard because sometimes you don't realize what it is that you're feeling, because no matter how old or young you are, it's hard to recognize what that feeling is. So like anger, what's showing as anger may actually just be sadness, and you don't realize that because it's coming out as anger. And sometimes it's hard to know the difference of what you're feeling. So when someone says, oh, how are you? Like, it's okay to say, you know what, I don't know. I don't know how I'm feeling. Because it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that, and that is such a good response to say to someone, how are you feeling? Because sometimes there are days where people don't, but you know what people say, Storm? They say, oh, fine. What they say when they feel like, they say, I'm fine. And they go, oh, no, I spoke to her before. And she was, I spoke to Mick before, and he said he was absolutely fine. But really, I'm thinking, just, I'm not. Or sometimes it might be, I'm not feeling anything. Like, I have no emotion. I have no thought. I am in no state to describe an adjective to this situation at all. And I think that's also okay. And it's about the openness and the honesty. Are you able to find, both within your family, maybe from outside, people you can speak to, the people you can have that sort of relatable maybe conversation, you maybe get a sense of understanding about what you're going through?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, because in a way, like the way I view things, which is probably not a great way, I'll be honest, is that I am so happy to help others and to listen to how other people are feeling and offer support and be like, right, so that's how you're feeling, what can I do to help you? But then when it comes to me, it's like, my emotions are mine and I need to deal with them myself. And it's like, I will cope with it by myself. I can do this. My shoulders are strong. I'm capable of sorting it out by myself. When really, like, sometimes I do need someone to say, no, you're not okay. Yeah. What can I do to help? But it's hard because I've always helped other people ever since I was as young as I can remember, like 5, 4 even. I've always done what I can to be there for everyone else and to help others. I mean, no matter who they were, even bullies at school, when they bullied me, I knew it was for a reason. So I would still be kind to them, and I would still include them in games in primary school or senior school or whatever, because that's who I was. But then when it comes to my feelings, it's like, you don't care about them. it's fine, I won't bother you. So it's hard.
I think it goes to show that you're hugely empathetic, to other people and their situations as well. I think it's so important, though, isn't it, to have that. We all try and take on responsibility, don't we? And think, well, that's everyone else, and I can be nice to them, but the stuff I'm dealing with, I need to deal with.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, though, you have to say, okay, but there will come a point where I suddenly can't cope, maybe, or there will come a point where I'm going to have this conversation. And that might not be now. And, you might be absolutely fine now. People in your situation, other people listening to this might be in that situation where they're thinking, okay, for now, I can take this on my shoulder. I think for the thing I always try and talk about is that if a situation did occur where you suddenly thought, I'm going to have to talk to someone, or I just need to vent, or I just need to have a rant at somebody, who might that be? And might it be, you don't have to tell me a name or anything like that, but it may, it might be. And there are helplines. I know, for instance, Carers Trust have got, some really great support services.
They're amazing.
Brilliant. And I think it's the thing, isn't it, whereby it comes to the point where if you think, for now, I can take on this responsibility, but if it carries on like this for another week, or, extra pressures from school or work, you might need to speak to someone. And it's almost about having that plan of who that will be and what that text message will say, or what that email might say, or what that phone call might sound like, to say to them, you know what, can we have a natter? Or I'm just feeling a bit meh at the moment. Can we have a chat about that? Do you reckon you've got that plan in place, or do you reckon you've got that opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, well, before we moved house, I was with York Carer Centre, and when I was there, there was this one support worker. I won't say a name because I don't know if she would let me or like me to. So I'll call her Faith. But I'm one of those people that can see through people like I'm looking through glass, and I can often know when people aren't quite saying everything. But when it comes to me, my walls are like way up here. And Faith was one of in fact, probably the only ever human I've ever met in my entire life that's been able to do that to me. And when we would meet up and have one-to-ones, which is kind of like a little chat to see how you're doing and stuff, if I would say, oh yeah, I'm fine, it's okay, she would know that it wasn't. And she would find these questions or find ways to get me talking about it before I realized I'm talking about it. And she's honestly such an amazing person, because she knew when I wasn't okay. And I've never had that before, because normally people can't see through my wall at all. So it's quite weird, but also amazing. But other than that, usually my dad, or I write in my diary. I find that really helps as well.
Good stuff. Everyone needs that outlet, the faith. Everyone needs a bit of faith in their lives. There you go.
Yes, I like that.
We could put that on a poster or a t-shirt, couldn't we?
Yes.
No, absolutely. But actually, for other family members, journaling is, I think it's big in the mental health world, isn't it now, in terms of, people writing stuff down, because I think it's the process of writing it down makes your brain think about what it is that you're going to write, and therefore it makes you process thoughts and feelings that maybe you hadn't processed, because you got to process it, because otherwise your hand won't know what to do when it hits the paper. So absolutely. One of the things that often comes up in terms of young carer conversations as well, Storm, is that the experiences that you've had and are sort of having on an ongoing basis are actually, away from, educational attainments and things like that, they're actually setting you up really well for experiences later in life, that you've got this skill set now that other young people aren't even like close to having, or like other young people might, find themselves at like university or something like that, and then are suddenly ringing home and going, how does a washing machine actually work? But you've got this like huge backlog of skills, things that you will have and be able to utilize now and in the future as well. And that's a great credit both to you, but also to any like workplace in the future or anything like that, that they'll go, oh, this person, they just seem to know how to do stuff. They just get stuff done. And that's a great thing to be able to take forward in life, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I know how to do the majority of things. And it's like, I know people out there that like my age or even a bit older that don't know how to do such basic things. Well, I say basic, but I shouldn't say that. That's a bit mean. They don't know how to do normal household things like cooking pasta. Or one person I know doesn't even know how to make a cup of tea. And it's like this, I can't imagine not ever knowing that, because I've been able to do that for basically all my life.
Exactly.
And it's hard to imagine that you're not knowing how to even do something like, again, I probably shouldn't say that, because for someone else that might be hard, but cooking rice or pasta or setting washing off, those type of things. But I know how to do, like when my brother went to uni, he knew how to do everything. And I remember him, because he went to uni quite a few years ago now, but I remember him ringing home and being like, these people don't know how to do a washing machine. What is going on?
Can I ask you in regard to that as well, in terms of, the experiences that you're going through now, the ongoing, obviously, care situation that you find yourself in, but are you optimistic about the future and what it might bring for you?
Yes and no, because I think that workplaces and education, whether it be primary school, senior school, college, uni, whatever, I think they all need to learn more. And I don't mean to be rude, but they need to stop being lazy and learn about carers, because they're just not doing it. They're not making that effort to learn about what it is, what it means, the positives about it, the signs of one, because there's just not that support, especially in work, because they normally view it as a negative thing. And it's like, oh, this means this person is going to be unreliable, when it doesn't. It just means we need to be flexible. And that's completely different to being unreliable. I think that they just need to learn about it and don't hide away from it. If you don't know, then either Google it, research it, or ask someone who is a carer and ask what you can do to support the person, or to support employers, you know what I mean?
Employees, yeah.
Thank you, employees that are carers, or to support students that are carers, because that will make all the difference in the world, because there's just so much you can do to help. And in order to do that, you have to know about it. And I think that's important to learn that, because caring can be stressful, it can be hard, and there are things that you can do to help. And yes, there are things outside of that can be done to help, like respite. That can be such an amazing thing, or getting the opportunity to do things that you don't get to do, because that is a huge part of it, and that can be really hard.
Well, I think if those employers in the future, or educational establishments, show an ounce of the empathy that you've shown in your life so far in the ongoing work storm, then I think they could all sort of take a lesson in that, and I think that would make a huge difference. We wish you all the best in terms of what you're up to at the moment. Obviously, your situation at home, but then as you head out into the wider world as well. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
It's okay.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.